Hey, every single one of us has that one game that's more important to you than any other game before it. The one that had a profound effect on you and shaped who you are as a person. For me, that game is Final Fantasy VI. It is my favorite game of all time. I'm pretty sure the reason why I like RPGs as much as I do today is because of this one. And to talk about it now is scary. I'm scared to look at it with a critical eye and see all of its flaws alongside of its strengths. And for me to talk about its strengths and why I love it as much as I do requires me to be emotionally vulnerable, and that's scary. So this video might be a little bit different than all the other ones. So while I encourage you to engage with me on a critical thought process alongside this game, I still hope I can get you to laugh a little bit. This is Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI was released in the West as Final Fantasy III. Don't worry, after this, the numbers start making sense. This was developed in only 1 year after Final Fantasy V. That blows my mind. This is another one of those games where I had rented it first, especially after having played the other 2 Final Fantasy games available in the US, and I liked it so much that I rented it multiple times in a row. Now, when people talk about what the best Final Fantasy games ever are, this one frequently comes up, and there's a good reason why. A tonal shift the moment that power button clicks on. Thunderstorms, dark clouds. An ominous, foreboding feeling sinks in, pierced only by a harrowing pipe organ. It's practically a challenge, as if to say, you're not ready for this. This one isn't like the others. It's difficult to paint how much of a change in tone this one is compared to the 5 previous games. Final Fantasy VI is much darker, with many more serious themes. For lack of better comparison, imagine playing The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask after Ocarina of Time. The unease breaks away thanks to familiarity, as the Crystal Prelude begins to play at the file select. This comfort is temporary, as starting a new game thrusts you back into a sense of darkness. Chimes punctuating major bits of story information laid before you. If your eyes and ears didn't convince you that this world will be different, it's told quite plainly. To summarize, in this world, magic has ceased to exist. It died out as people got more and more used to machines. And in this relatively steampunk world, there are rumors that the rampant Empire's army has a young woman who can use magic. And that's a big deal. Thus, we are introduced to this miraculous person, Terra, as she accompanies a few Imperial soldiers to seek out a magical being known as an esper. And Terra is robbed of her thoughts, mind-controlled, thanks to the Empire. I'll never get sick of the opening credits crawl. Mode 7 walking of their Magitech armor, the incredible music, the blustering snow, all while they approach the city of Narshe. Narshe? Yeah, this is another one of those games where I'm really not certain on some of the official pronunciations of some of the names. I'm gonna do my best, but I apologize in advance if some of them sound grating compared to what you know. Terra and her Imperial escorts, the first instance of Biggs and Wedge, ride into town on Magitech armor, and these machines do more than just look cool and show the mechanical, imposing power of the Empire. They provide a safe tutorial. It puts the player into battles that they can easily handle, and all the Magitech abilities make it very difficult for the player to lose. It shows how to take actions, how there are different elements, and if you're Terra, you have even more Magitech expertise, along with a few new battle formations that can happen, side attacks, and pincer attacks. The simple yet effective tutorial continues as you go into the first boss fight against the lightning snail creature, where first off, you hear the best song in the game. The soldiers talk about how the battles are real time, and you can wait out an enemy's actions to better plan your own. I'll go more into the battle system in a bit here. After meeting with the frozen Esper, it has some sort of reaction with Terra, causing the two soldiers to get wiped from existence and destroying her Magitech. When she awakens, she learns that she was being mind-controlled and that the soldiers of Narshe are trying to take her away. A kind man who works with a group opposed to the Empire helps her escape. She falls during her escape, but thankfully help is on the way, in the form of the treasure hunter, Locke, along with the best song in the game. Just as Locke is introduced, so is another character and another gameplay mechanic. Mog shows up with a team of Moogles to conveniently help Locke in the upcoming fight, and more importantly, give the player a total of 3 separate teams to control all at once. The enemies pursue Terra, and you can move each team into defensive positions or have them go on the offensive. Maybe it's simple now, but this was impressive for the time, and it also shows that there will be times that more than just your favorite 4 party members are going to be used. But during battle, at its core, how is Final Fantasy VI different from Final Fantasy V? It isn't? Not really. A lot of the stuff outside of combat is different, but in the battles itself? Not really. A lot of previous known mechanics are back. Attacks, the front and back row system, multi-targeting with magic spells, and special abilities are back like Steel. With a lack of a job system, now special abilities are tied to individual characters, closer to how Final Fantasy IV had it. Only now, there's a much wider variety of options. Edgar uses machinery for different attacks and effects. Setzer has slots for random effects. Mog dances. Celeste can absorb all magic attacks. Every single member has their own ability that makes them stand out. But, which will be sort of a running theme throughout this critique, not all of them are made equal. For example, Gao learns how to mimic enemy monsters in battle, which overlaps a lot with Strago's blue magic, only is more unreliable, and Realm's sketch ability also copies an enemy attack. And sure, Celeste can absorb magic with her runic ability, but when your party is also trying to cast magic, it quickly loses all utility early on and gets forgotten about. Another example would be Cyan's ability, his sword techniques, or Bushido, if you prefer updated names. He has multiple to choose from, and the way you do that is to let a bar slowly fill up until you get the one you want. Yeah, this is it, and there's no way to speed up or alter this bar. This is not engaging or interesting, it's just waiting. Compare this to someone like Sabin, whose blitz techniques are easily the best. He shoots energy beams, pummels dudes, has the ultimate bum rush attack, and of course, he can do this. So while the job system itself is no longer here, the unique abilities essentially give each character a sort of job. Thief, monk, samurai, blue mage, etc. Some other well-known jobs also sort of make appearances thanks to this game giving everyone 2 relic slots, which are the accessory slots. These accessories can be the usual protective item or stat booster, and other ones give different abilities like the Dragoon's jump, the Paladin's cover, or even just making you move faster outside of battle. They provide for a little bit of extra customization and variety, but much like most other abilities in the game, they don't hold up very long and get quickly replaced. Sadly, much like almost everyone's unique ability. Final Fantasy VI offers further character customization through the Esper system, in which you can equip Magicite to characters. This allows every character to learn magic, have a summon, and almost every Magicite gives them a different stat bonus upon level up. You can painstakingly use this to tweak your characters how you'd like, such as by increasing their magic power, speed, overall hit points, and so on. And much like how previously jobs got ability points to learn new skills, an equipped Magicite teaches magic at different rates as they acquire ability points. What this means is that it's possible for every character to learn every spell in the game.
Remember, this is a world in which magic no longer exists, and a major story point is your entire party suddenly getting it back. Because of this, magic is incredibly powerful in Final Fantasy VI, which further makes a lot of character abilities become worthless in the face of dropping, say, Ultima. Why use Setter's unreliable slots when a magic spell is far more effective and powerful? This is one of Final Fantasy VI's shortcomings. The esper system can give everyone magic, and magic is the best thing to use, causing a homogenization of all the unique characters midway through the game. Eventually, they're all throwing out spells with maybe a handful of physical characters left, none of which have worthwhile abilities anymore, and they all start to be the same. It's not the best system in the world. It's unrefined, exploitable, a bit on the grindy side to learn the magic, and saps away the uniqueness of almost every character in the game.
That said, the battle system itself, it's still fun, quick, beautifully presented, and getting those new spells or carefully selected level up bonuses is great. The combat system itself is good, and it feels snappy and polished. Outside of that, it isn't perfect. And besides, the game's buggy as shit.
I know each installment had its issues before this one, but man, it really seems like the problems are much more prevalent here. Stuff like evasion not working at all, making the darkness ailment have no effect whatsoever, and ignoring it is the best way to deal with it. There's also an exploitable bug in which you can cast invisibility on enemies, which makes them 100% susceptible to magic, including instant kill spells such as X-Zone and Death. This even works against bosses and completely trivializes them once you realize this works. There's a bug you can use with Gao, making him ferociously powerful. The same goes for Cyan. You can dupe items using Realm's sketch ability. There's a lot. While most of them don't typically affect your casual playthrough, it's worth noting how buggy the game's original release is. This isn't totally detrimental to the quality of the game, as the good heavily outweighs my nitpicks. I was pleasantly surprised to see that some of the bosses were more intricate than I remember. A few have mechanics that you must learn and play around, instead of just dishing out damage. They aren't as difficult or involved as, say, Final Fantasy V's, but almost all of them require more than just whittling down hit point sponges. There are 14 total characters in Final Fantasy VI, each having something unique about them. Mechanically alone, this demonstrates what is easily Final Fantasy VI's strongest aspect: character. Every single one is more than their abilities or combat prowess. Almost all of them have an arc, get developed to be believable, relatable, someone to sympathize with. It is leagues beyond the melodramatic simplicity of Final Fantasy IV, or the barely there establishment of V's characters. It is imperative to have good characters, because that's what makes any story stand out. If you don't care about what happens to the people in the story becomes inconsequential and unsubstantial. Final Fantasy VI was the first one in the series to dare to make real, developed characters that aren't one note. The first to make a story that could have an emotional effect on the player. The first to, in a sense, take itself seriously.
At this point, there's no way for me to continue talking about the game without going deep into spoiler territory. Consider this your one warning, because there's no turning back from here.
The developers went into great care to make sure that each character has a sense of individuality to them. The expanded special abilities for each is an example of this. It's also evident at the start of every battle. Each character has a unique intro animation in the first 2 seconds right as combat starts. Oftentimes, these animations showcase the personalities. Sabin shows up ready to fight. Locke comes from behind enemy lines as if you were scouting ahead or sneaking. Mog dances. This matches how each has a unique visual design, all boasting different silhouettes and, again, has significance. Sabin and Edgar are twin brothers and share the same color palette. Realm is Strago's granddaughter, and again they share the same colors. Terra, who is not quite of this world, stands out by having the unique trait of noticeably green hair, helping her seem a little more inhuman than everyone else.
Fun fact, for the game's 25th anniversary, there was an interview with some of the developers on the original team. In that interview, they revealed that they created all of the character sprites first, and then famed artist Yoshitaka Amano made art based on the sprites, not the other way around. They even joked that if they made all their sprites based on Amano's artwork, all of them would be blonde. So, whenever you see Terra out there with blonde hair, just remember that's bullshit and inaccurate to her original depiction, green hair Terra for life.
As much as I love the varied and interesting character designs, it's their stories that make me love this game as much as I do. So many of them have excellent, expansive backstories that explain why they are the way they are, and what motivates them to do what they do. Just important as their backstories, they all have front stories. It's that motivation that makes many scenes have additional layers of emotional and internal complexity. Take Locke, for example, who is easily my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. He always comes off as eagerly protective of other people. When he finds Terra, a young girl in distress, he protects her and then carries her out to safety. When he later finds Celeste, he makes it a point to rescue her as well, despite Celeste being a former Imperial general. Later, you learn of Locke's burden. He's felt responsible for an accident causing the love of his life, Rachel, to get hurt and lost her memory, only for her to die during a raid by the Empire. He couldn't save Rachel, so imagine the guilt he has as he carries an unconscious Terra to safety, and even more so after discovering that Terra has had all of her thought and memory taken from her. And again when he sees Celeste chained up and beaten while bearing a very clear resemblance to Rachel. Another strong example is Shadow, the mysterious assassin mercenary. As you discover his past, look back upon his reactions and little signals as he is around a realm. There are so many little movements that show how he truly feels and his struggle with that part of himself. A fascinating thing of Final Fantasy VI is the main character, because while you start off with Terra and she does drive a lot of integral moments early on, she isn't the main character. It doesn't really have a main character. The game basically asks you, who do you want to be the main character? The first instance of this question comes only a couple of hours into the game, in which paths diverge and split. Rather than guiding you through them or bouncing around, you are asked to choose which scenario you wish to play. You can play them in any order. Shortly after, you are asked to track down Terra in the town of Zozo, which, by the way, has the best song in the game. Before you go, something all new to Final Fantasy is introduced. Select your party of anyone you want. Who do you want to be a leader? Who goes along? Who do they have closer friendships with than others? This is further cemented as several dialogue lines do not have a name before them indicating who is speaking. Instead, you'll see whatever party members you've chosen make movements or nod before the line, making it so that the line is said by who you've chosen. Basically, the game asks you, who do you want saying this line? As you read the lines in your head, you are allowed to hear them in whomever's voice you wish. There are moments where you are rewarded for having certain characters with you in certain scenes by adding in an extra line of dialogue or an additional interaction or two. Typically, it isn't anything vital, but it usually provides a bit more development and does encourage changing things up or by replaying with a different party, even though I pretty much use Locke in every instance I can get. The same goes for learning any character's backstory. How much do you want to learn about them? Almost each of theirs is entirely optional. The more you use them and bring them to different locations, the more they'll speak, the more they interact, and the more they reveal about themselves and their personalities. The story itself is excellent and has some incredible moments. While its pacing is some of the best the series has, almost never wasting your time and moving things forward at an engaging rate, it does have a few stumbles. For example, while the 3-scenario split is great and awesome to see it for the first time, they are not equal. Sabin's scenario is about 5 times as long as Edgar and Terra's. Another time the plot felt sluggish is when the party has to go to Thamaza, as it introduces 2 more party members relatively late in the story, and felt a lot like a lot of integral world building and setup quickly jammed in before the climax of the 3rd act. Almost as if they forgot to fit the existence of the god statues in somewhere else and had to force it onto the player. These are the only couple of blemishes I could think of on an otherwise expertly paced story. However, what makes Final Fantasy VI so incredibly good and memorable is the way they tell the story. For really the first time in the series, it allows time and space for the characters, allowing them to speak to each other, express their emotions, their concerns. It's okay to have scenes that allow character moments and not drive the plot forward. One of the finest examples of this is also perhaps one of the most beloved scenes in the whole game. As the party searches for a means to access the southern continent and go after the Empire directly, they concoct a plan to enlist the owner of the world's only airship, Setzer. This involves having Celeste pose as a famous opera singer to get its attention. The opera sequence is, simply put, beautiful. It's more than its presentation. Though a full-fledged opera and several movements telling a story within a story is a strong part of it, something like this simply was not feasible before. It's a delight for both eyes and ears, and to those willing to look deeper, an important piece of storytelling. There is an argument that the opera scene is pointless, as it halts the entire game just to have this one sequence before getting the next party member, and to some, that is reasonable. I contest that, however, because the whole opera makes a very clear and appreciated statement. It is okay to have scenes that don't further the plot as it develops character. A key mantra to make most RPGs more enjoyable is to give weight behind what people are saying. If you simply read the words rather than absorb and interpret them, you may find it to be lackluster. Final Fantasy VI is the first in the series to reward players that read between the lines. The opera scene makes this clear. At base level, it's cute. The music is catchy, the vignettes endearing, and a fair distraction from the menace of the world. Look deeper, and you see the layers of complexity it adds to its rich tapestry of characters. Celeste, who was once a battle-hardened general of the evil empire, now turned traitor and abetting the allies, begrudgingly volunteers to be the main star. Again, on the surface, it's a silly scenario and puts the characters in a humorous situation, when in reality, it takes that cold, hardened exterior of Celeste and shows just how soft, how vulnerable she really is. Just before her debut, Locke enters the dressing room to check on Celeste. Stunned by her transformation into a stage star, Locke begins to see Celeste in a new light, something that had not gone unnoticed by her. Having only ever been a general, and, as she had told Edgar before, not some love-starved twit, the possibility of someone caring for her and not her capabilities was a foreign feeling. It was something she even doubted, as she questions Locke about it, as if she were calling him out not only in trying to beget his own guilt, and calling herself out for thinking someone could care for her. Then, Celeste takes the stage. The words she sings of the opera are not coincidentally reflective of her own feelings and internal conflicts, the confusion she feels of if Locke even truly cares for her at all. Love goes away, like night into day. It's just a fading dream. Her loneliness finally allowed the possibility of someone else's care and affection. I'm the darkness, you're the stars. Celeste believes that Locke was only using her to try to replace Rachel, feeling perhaps this was a mistake. Must I forget you? Our solemn promise. Will autumn take the place of spring? Masked within the lyrics, she admits her own feelings to herself and to Locke in the audience, unbeknownst to him. My heart won't give you up. Ere I walk away, let me hear you say, I meant as much to you. So gently you touched my heart. I will be forever yours. Come what may, I won't age a day. I'll wait for you, always. The opera scene is powerful and heart-touching, deservedly known as the most memorable scene in the game. It's the words and emotions of moments such as this that propels Final Fantasy VI into reverence. And shortly after, a giant octopus named Ultros attacks to ruin the opera, so it's also not afraid of some levity here and there. Again, it's these character-building scenes that makes this story so strong. Letting the characters have conversations that isn't about the Empire or saving the world or whatever creates characters to care about and empathize with. Inside the Returner hideout, the walk to the mountains of Narshe, the boat ride to Thamaza. All of these otherwise inconsequential scenes build good characters. But what good are strong heroes without an equally compelling villain? Kefka is the best villain in all of Final Fantasy, bar none. Much like the heroes, he has his own development arc. Not a wholly unique one, but one nonetheless. What makes him such a good bad guy is that he's a constant force throughout the game. He is introduced very early on and interacts with the heroes. His bombastic and over-the-top personality, complete with awfully amazing quotes, paints a perfect picture of how unstable he truly is. Because he appears as a foe multiple times, he's established as not just something you have to defeat, but want to. Especially as he seems to always get away. It's that consistent reinforcement of his evil that is shown to the player firsthand. As the heroes experience it, as does the player. The burning of Castle Figaro, the poisoning of innocent lives in Castle Doma, the slaughter of dozens of espers, and General Leo and Thamaza. His evil is shown, not told. And yet throughout the narrative, it's made constantly clear that Kefka is a henchman. He plays second fiddle to the leader of the evil empire, Emperor Gestalt. If Kefka is this bad, then how much worse can Gestalt be? The game offers an answer for you. He isn't. Having acquired the power of the three god statues, the creators of life and magic, Emperor Gestalt and Kefka uplift the floating continent, poised to take over the world. As the party arrives, the game establishes that this is it, the end game. It stops here and now. Kefka, Gestalt, and the statues are ahead. The final battle foreshadowing is reinforced by powerful enemies and a formidable boss, the Atma weapon, or properly translated, the Ultima weapon. Defeating that, the party arrives to stop Gestalt from using the statues. This gives opportunity for Kefka to reveal how evil and beyond help he truly is. Kefka betrays and kills Gestalt. And then the unthinkable happens.
You lose. You don't stop him. The good guys fail.
As is the planet, the party is torn asunder. The airship splintered, lives lost. On that day, the world is changed forever. Kefka is the rare example in which the villain wins. He got exactly what his twisted mind wanted. Destruction and despair. His rise as a joke of an errand boy, a jester, to a misanthropic nutjob, to the absolute merciless ruling power in the whole world is his story arc. How he changes from the beginning to the end, all while laughing the whole way, burned into your memory forever. This new World of Ruin poses a new open-world approach to RPGs. Everyone is gone. Only 3 characters, Celeste, Edgar, and Setzer, are required to beat the game. Everyone else is optional, and for all you know, dead forever. From here, you are able to search freely throughout the new landscape, choosing any locale or direction to begin your search for friends. Remember, who do you want to be the main character? Go find them. The World of Ruin also enforces what I believe to be the central theme of Final Fantasy VI. The whole game is about loss. How does a character respond to loss? Almost every character's backstory is about losing something, and the end of the world is them continuing to deal with loss. Most importantly, there is some form of loss and response to it that everyone can identify with in some way. When the world ended, Locke went back to trying to revive Rachel and abolish his feelings of guilt. Edgar kept trying to find solutions instead of allowing himself to emotionally process it. Gao said he must become stronger and didn't give up. Strago's will broke, succumbing to the cult of Kefka. Terra chose to be there for now orphaned children. Cyan began living a lie, pretending to be someone else. Celeste, so overwrought with grief and the belief that she was truly alone, nothing was going to get better, and the pain unbearable, tries to kill herself.
I've been there. That feeling of overwhelming loss and pain and heartbreak and just wanting it to all end. Final Fantasy VI takes this theme of loss and asks, which one of these responses are you?
Even Kefka represents a response to loss, perhaps the most dismal of them all. nihilism. Nothing matters. Why bother building? Why bother doing anything? Why have friends or loved ones? To Kefka, he's doing everyone a favor because they can't see what he believes to be the ultimate truth. Destruction is inevitable, and they can't accept that. Honestly, I could spend forever doing an in-depth character analysis on everyone, but then we would be here forever. I could only really do this on Final Fantasy VI in particular, as it's the one that I know inside and out the best. Which is also why I can safely say that for as strong as the game's characters are, it can also be its weakest, as they are not all made equal. It's clear some characters just get more or better backstory and writing than others. Locke and Celeste get a ton, whereas people like Ralum and Strago are practically accessories to Shadow's story and don't grow at all. Shadow does get quite a bit, as does Cyan, but Mog, Gogo, Umaro, or Gao don't get a whole lot. Even as a more prominent character throughout the whole game, Edgar doesn't develop compared to most of the others. For every couple of outstanding characters and stories, there's one painfully lackluster example. This imbalance doesn't have much of an excuse, as there's plenty of time and room to explore any of them further. Good lord, I haven't even talked about the music yet. I already mentioned the best song in the game, but there's so much more. I mentioned the Crystal Prelude being back right at the start, and the battle theme starts off with that recognizable, awesome bass. But this soundtrack tries to break out of a familiar sound like the previous games on the SNES, especially with it having a more industrial setting mixed with fantasy. The Veldt has such a unique wildlife sound by its excellent use of percussion. Some areas have unique music that only plays there. For example, the Magitech Research Facility is the best song in the game. But truly, Final Fantasy VI furthered its commitment to character by giving each and every character their own unique, memorable theme that plays for them throughout the game. These leitmotifs show up in numerous ways, such as taking a character's theme song and using the same melody in a melancholic version, especially during emotional or difficult times. The brothers Figaro have a majestic, powerful, and royal song. It's the best song in the game. But when they flash back to the passing of their father and their splitting paths, the same theme takes on an all-new feel. Locke's theme, which is the best in the game, is upbeat and represents his adventurous self. But when the subject of Rachel comes up, the same motif is filled with sorrow. Setzer's theme boasts freedom, as if the music itself is putting the wind in your hair. And when he finally opens up about his personal loss, it too uses the same melody to express him. Interestingly, Celeste's theme is the same melody as the opera. However, when the music plays for her during her times of duress, it's her main theme that's filled with sadness. Those few times her actual theme plays is more indicative of her character than most realize. Terra's theme and motif are the strongest throughout, as it not only plays during scenes about her, but also the overworld, which is the best song in the game. And the motif makes brief reprises in other songs as well. Even the Empire itself has its own theme, with its motif making multiple appearances. And of course, Kefka has an equally memorable theme song, one that is both comical and sinister. And it's this theme that serves as a basis for the final battle track and the best song in the game, Dancing Mad. Speaking of, that final battle and the dungeon leading up to it is awesome. The multiple party split mechanic of a few previous battles is now used for an entire dungeon. Up to 14 playable characters, you'll be able to use 12 of them at once. Right before the final showdown with Kefka, each character offers a development to their arcs, showing how they've changed from when their journey started. Albeit in an incredibly forced, cheesy way. So much though that even Kefka calls them out on that. But into the final showdown, everybody fights. You set 12 of up to 14 characters that you have to face Kefka. Should someone fall in battle, they'll be replaced with the next in line. Everyone can be vital and useful at the end. The ending too makes it a point to be about the characters over spectacle or what happens next. Everyone gets a moment in the spotlight, complete with new arrangements of each of their theme songs, and an object important to each of them. I also love how they use this opportunity to hint at character relationships. For example, Realm's section and theme song leads directly into Shadows. Celeste's theme begins, sounding more hopeful than ever before, only for Locke's to join it in harmony, as if to show that the characters themselves are coming together. It's beautiful. I love this kind of implicit storytelling throughout the whole game, rather than stating things outright in clunky exposition. From beginning to end, Final Fantasy VI spends its time highlighting the cast and what happens to them.
I haven't played this in well over a decade, and having done so again, Final Fantasy VI is still my absolute favorite in the whole series. Obviously it isn't perfect. I'm someone who greatly appreciates deep, well-written characters. Final Fantasy VI does that in stride. I absolutely recommend playing through this one today. If you can. It's not the most accessible Final Fantasy game in the world.
I played the Super Nintendo original and still love it, flaws and all. There was a mobile version that ported to Steam, just like Final Fantasy V. I personally can't stand the user interface and controls, and I think the art is ugly with everyone's puffed out chests and clashing environment textures. If that doesn't bother you, all the power to you, and play it. I don't recommend it though. Its first port was to the PlayStation 1. It has a few upgrades. It fixes a lot of bugs, adds in a bestiary, and 2 FMV cutscenes at the start and the end as an unlockable. It isn't the best port though. It has notorious load times going into battle or even opening up the menu, and the frame rate really suffers at times. Plus, the FMV sequences are so underwhelming, you're better off just looking at them on YouTube. In 2006, it got ported to the Game Boy Advance. This version boasts quite a bit. Bug fixes, an all-new translation, and even more added content. New spells, new espers to find, and 2 new dungeons. The downsides to it are it doesn't look or sound quite as good as the SNES original. The color palette is brighter and the lack of contrast makes sprites lose definition. The GBA can't put out the same quality of sound as the SNES, so music, and especially sound effects, are rougher. That said, you can emulate it with a few patches to make it better. There's a patch to make the graphics closer to the original, and the true sound patch helps the music. It isn't perfect and is still noticeably lackluster compared to the source though. I also just don't like the text font. Even with the patches, I don't prefer the GBA version, primarily because of the new translation. While some things are better, like item names or spells and descriptions, the script, I feel, suffers. The GBA version loses all of the subtlety and nuance that the SNES localization had. And in some parts, the new dialogue is abrasive or even cornier. So I highly recommend you play the Super Nintendo version. And perhaps the best option is to emulate it with a patch known as the Ted Woolsey Uncensored patch. It retains the localization of the original, while cleaning up some typos and overly censored mentions of heavier subjects such as death and certain sprites. You'll have the beautiful music, visuals, and gameplay of the original, but with an improved translation that stays truthful to the original.
The Final Fantasy series has been loved up through this one. It was Final Fantasy VI's commitment to deeper, more mature themes and a fantastic cast that made it go from a great series to a special one. Final Fantasy VI will always have a special place in my heart. This was the first game to make me feel. And for that, I will always appreciate and cherish it, flaws and all. And with that, the Final Fantasy series leaves the Super Nintendo era. I hope that works out for them.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more upcoming videos and follow me over on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. And let me know what you want to see next.